I'm going to give you like a behind the scenes look of what I do that you probably have no idea that I do. I really, to be honest with you, there's a reason why I'm not on social media. I don't want anybody to know what I'm going to do. This is really, I'm giving you guys a lot of information today. Okay, and I can tell you, House doesn't know, Justice doesn't know. I got pro coaches, they don't know. All right, hey, it's an honor to be speaking here to you all today, and understand, I take this very personal because I was a pro football player myself. So everything I do with my athletes is, I wish was done to me. So that's kind of the basis of what we're going to talk about today. Now, the title of my talk is Engineering the American Football Season, Testing, Tracking, and Training. Now, I kind of thought long and hard, what am I going to do? I want to be a little different. I want to give them a different kind of approach or a different outlook in what's going on. So kind of what I'm going to do today, I'm going to kind of tell you, I'm going to give you like a behind the scenes look of what I do that you probably have no idea that I do. And that's the way that, and that's what I like, because I really, to be honest with you, there's a reason why I'm not on social media. I don't want anybody to know what I'm going to do. This is really, I'm giving you guys a lot of information today. Okay, and I can tell you, House doesn't know, Justice doesn't know. I got pro coaches, they don't know. Okay, Rick knows is in here. Rick is in here. Rick knows what's going on. All right, so first of all, let me tell you, and I'm very passionate about this. I love this stuff, okay? So first of all, let me give you my setup. So my executive vice president, the man that oversees everything, is Tom Coughlin. Okay, Tom, you probably know him. He was at the Giants, but he was also my football coach for the Jaguars. I played on the Jaguars' inaugural team, so I have an invested interest in the Jaguars, okay? My general manager is Dave Caldwell. Dave and I have been there 6 years together. We're going in now I'm going into my 7th year this year. All right, and my head football coach is Doug Marone. Doug and I had the honor to work together for 2 years. He was the O-line coach, and I used to be an offensive lineman. That was about 80 pounds ago. Okay, but we have that unique bond, of how training should be, which is awesome. So I get an immense amount of support. And to be honest with you, we couldn't train our guys like we do if I didn't have that support, and that's important. All right, so with everybody, it comes different challenges, okay? So my general manager challenge, okay, Dave said, listen, he just like every other general manager, they want their guys healthy. So the Jaguars are a very traditional, very injured team before we got there. And when they came back to play, okay, they got hurt. All right, so Milo, what can we do to fix this? All right, so I want to first of all, what are we up against? NFL, okay, last year 551 athletes ended up on IR. All right, consistent NFL roster turnover. Every year you're dealing for 30 to 35% of your team is new. All right, now we'd say athletes entering the off season. So we have 2 off seasons. We have off season 1, which is going on right now. So the end of that season started as soon as your last game ended. That off season started. Now guys don't have to be with us and train with us to mid-April. So essentially that's 4 months that we don't have our guys unless they elect to do so to be with us. All right, then we have off season 2, which is at the end of our 9 weeks training. They go away for about 6 weeks prior to training camp. And so I call those the black holes because you never know what's going on. So I always say you have a third of your guys are unfit, a third are average fit, and the other third, the top, okay, are your guys that go above and beyond. All right, and the guys that are unprepared are your rookies, okay? Those are the guys that we just were all at the combine last week. Those guys coming in because they're busy getting ready for the combine. Then your second, third year players because they think they've made it. All right, and the average is 2.3 years, so you don't know what's going to happen. And then your new UFAs, your unrestricted free agencies, which opens up next week. All right, that's important. All right, and then I calculated it up. We have 43 hours and 9 weeks to get these guys ready to go. All right, so then I went to this. Okay, where do injuries come from? So first of all, okay, it went back to what Dan Paff says, okay? The athlete has to meet you 50-50. The athlete's got to be just as invested as you are invested. If not, the relationship might work for a little, but not a lot. Faulty programming training spikes, we're going to hit that at the end. Medical issues, prior injuries. Now that's okay if I got guys that I've had, but that 1/3 that I don't have is a problem. Then I got mechanical movement flaws, which we work on all year. All right? Now, how does this kind of all tie in? Preventive medicine, okay? 1965, Lavelle and Clark wrote a book, Preventive Medicine for the Doctor and His Community. And basically what he talked about is taking a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach, all right, to your health. And in 2000, 50% of the American deaths were from preventable causes, so obviously there's a high cost that goes with that. Ironically, Dan Paff sent me an article last year called Preventive Biomechanics from Hewitt and Bates. Okay, a paradigm shift with a translational approach to injury prevention. All right, and so basically all this does is take the same concepts as preventive medicine, and it's taking that proactive approach rather than reactive approach to your training. All right, so it has 3 stages. Stage 1 is that we screen our athletes for identifiable risk factors. I want to see in these 2 off seasons I got where I don't know what they've been doing, if they've been doing, who they've been doing it with, what's going on. I got to figure them back out again. Okay, now the guys have been staying and training with me, that's a different story. 2, okay, and then once we figure out what's going on, we got to institute preventive protocols. Okay, I got to fix these issues before that season starts. All right, and 3 is where I don't want them to go. Okay, I don't want them to get hurt. All right, but if they are, then I got to focus on the treatment and rehab. All right, so here's some things, okay? I think I like to measure. I'm an analytic guy. I think with numbers, okay? So I put everything in a number aspect. Okay, some things that drive me crazy is that when you can do this with a small group, you can't do this with a big group, is that if you have, okay, a big group of guys, I don't want to say, oh, I do a functional movement screen every day with our guys because I know how they move. You cannot. You do not know how everybody's feeling, okay? And pro athletes are master compensators, so I got to measure. I got to control it. I got to know what's going on. I got to give them feedback. I got to give my GM feedback. All right, so we already talked about when do we test and track? We talked about our off season. So as soon as they come in mid-April, we do a full test with our guys. Partial screen 2, we do that prior to our vet mini camp, and that is after 9 weeks, and that's just we're just testing their issue. Then we do NFL off-season 2, okay? So when they report for training camp, it's a full screen. Then we do bye week. And then during a bye week, we'll hit them up with a partial. And then periodically, as we go through, if guys got real issues, we'll hit them up as they go. All right, so this keeps my athletic trainers and my PTs happy. I use the American Physical Therapy Association model. So basically, we exam, we eval, we diagnose, prognosis. I'm not getting an intervention today. That's your job to figure it out. I think that we have a good handle on the intervention. All right, but that's what we use. That keeps them happy. All right, so how do we do this? Now, here's the hard thing when you do this. We kind of sit down as a staff, and so the first time that you see your guys coming back that haven't been with you, you got to kind of eliminate your bias, okay? You got to know, because you know innately how that athlete moves and you know things that he's got going on, all right? And so I really try to rescreen everybody with a clear mind, okay? This is the first time I've ever seen this athlete. What's going on? Has he fixed it? Is something got worse? Am I picking up something new? All right? And then from there, okay, we now incorporate their injury history, all right? And I want to know from that, do I train that athlete? Do I train and treat that athlete, or do I just treat that athlete? And, you know, the pro coaches will tell you in here, every year you come back, you got surprises. Last year I had 2 surprises. Rookie, unrestricted free agent. We picked it up right away, and they were able to play the season. All right? And then, now the challenge comes in kinds of determining what kind of series of tests you use and then recognizing those red flags. Now, this is what works for us, is what I'm going to go over, but you guys can determine what works for you, okay, depending on your situation. All right, so testing, here we go, right? Here we go. We call these cluster screens, okay? So when we do cluster screens, think of a cluster screen like it's a host of screens that kind of you put together like a puzzle, and they kind of lead you down the path to figure out kind of the problem with what's going on. All right, so cluster screen 1, we look at the neck and shoulder. Cluster screen 2, we look at the hip, groin, and low back together. All right, cluster screen 3, we look at the foot, ankle, and knee. All right, now, when we do this, who's involved in the process? This is all hands on deck. This is my chiros, my PTs, my ATCs, any interns that I have. We actually bring our therapists in. Our scouts are in. Our scouts are doing heights, body weights. So it is an all hands on deck. There's a lot of information going on here. So and it's like a big snake in the weight room, all right? And then also as you go, I put all my references in red, okay? Because that's the big thing, is that you got to reference your work. It's like Jim said, you can't pick it up off the internet. You got to know, where did that work come from, all right? So here we go. Here's my favorite player on our team, our starting middle linebacker, Paul Posluszny, okay? And then I don't know if you guys know, but JL talked about Buddy, okay? So Buddy is my mentor, okay? When I played for the Steelers, Buddy was a strength coach at Pitt, and I used to train. Buddy trained me. And then when Buddy got hired to the Browns, Buddy took me as his assistant to the Browns. So you'll see probably a lot of commonality with how we do things. All right, so the hardest thing about coaching this guy, Buddy used to say when he was at Pitt, when he had all the great offensive linemen, was turning the lights on. It's the hardest thing I got to do, but he's in here for the neck and shoulder, all right? And I'll show you why in a second. All right, incidents, concussions, 2015, 2017, 799 concussions in the NFL, all right? Now, what bothers me more than that is that I keep reading articles about, okay, you're looking at women's soccer, men's and women's lacrosse, men's and women's ice hockey. They actually, I'm hearing, have a higher incident rate. All right, so here's Puzz again. Neck, how about that for a neck, huh? He's our starting middle line. He looks like a middle linebacker, does he? And like I said, in 20 years of playing and coaching, there's probably not a greater individual I've coached. So the first thing we do, this is our chiropractors do the screen. We look at neck girth, and we take that just below the Adam's apple, and we look at neck length. So from the posteriorly Indian to T1. So we want to see, we have norms developed over time. I have guys' data over time, so we kind of know where they are with what's going on. From there, our chiros take them into active neck cervical rotation. All right, so what they want to do, we want to make sure we have full range of motion in our neck because we know that's an issue too when it leads to concussions. So what they do, we use a goniometer, okay? They find the apex of the skull, they look all the way to the right and all the way to the left, and this is very important to know that they actually have just full range of motion in the neck. All right, from there we do active neck lateral flexion. This is called a bubble inclinometer. Okay, and the key is when you do this, you got to have your chiro's got to stabilize his opposite shoulder. Then he drops his ear to his shoulder, and you look at that range of motion. All right, and then from there, okay, we do this is a clearance test. Okay, active neck cervical flexion and extension. So we want to see with a guy with his mouth shut, can he touch his chin to his chest, and then can he, with his mouth shut, look all the way up to the sky? Or can he be perpendicular to the ceiling? And you would be surprised how many guys cannot do that second picture, that extension clearing test, because of how tight they are due to the iPhone kyphosis these days. They're all tight and locked down. All right, so, and if that's the issue, we got our chiros know that we get dry needling, we get cupping, we get electroacupuncture, whatever we need, we hop on stuff right away. We can't let it go. All right, so let's talk about shoulders in the same cluster screen, all right? 450 shoulder injuries in the past 3 years, all right, in the NFL. Here we go. So what do? We do a grip test, all right? Just the old grip test that they used to talk about in strength training manuals. You don't see anybody doing this stuff anymore. We do two position. I do an overhead and at the side, okay? So here's what I want. If we do an overhead grip test, okay, and if there's an issue there, if there's a big asymmetry right to left side, I go right to neck. Something's wrong with the neck, they got to be cleared with the neck. Okay, so there's a neck issue in there somewhere going on. What we're looking for, okay, why is now overhead is going to be stronger than at the side. Why? I really can't find that. The only thing I found is that it's probably a hanging reflex. Okay, you can hang a lot more than you could hold at your side. And then usually our dominant side is our weaker side. All right, now we go at the side. Okay, if a guy has a big asymmetry between the side, we like him within 10%, we're thinking shoulder, elbow, something going on there. Okay, but this is simple things that it can be a value to you. Plus, you got baseline data. If a guy gets hurt and you never knew where he was in the first place, how do you know he's really ready in a return to play protocol? You're guessing. Okay, don't guess. Know what's going on. You got to give great data I'm trying to give great data to my PT, to my doctor. To me, in NFL, we got to deal with workers' comp too. So you got to know. You got to be on the ball with what's going on. All right, from there we go shoulder mobility, overhead squat. Okay, and we do overhead squat for a couple reasons. All right, and this is my backup center, okay, I actually told him to take a picture of a bad overhead squat because he's a really good overhead squatter. All right, and the reason why I do this, I just got done doing this at the NFL Combine, the FMS screen, all right, and I was telling House, how really it's really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I was missing, and we don't necessarily use the FMS, but we use variations of it. All right, so here's what we're looking at here. We're looking at just bilateral shoulder mobility. We look at T-spine, and here's the other thing. How tight are their pecs and lats? Okay, because if you got a skill guy, tight lats, that ties right in with the hips, and that goes right to all RPR principles. All right, so you got to know, and to me, skill guys don't want to stretch like the big guys. My big guys are very proactive at taking care of themselves. My skill guys are the worst, and I don't mean that bad. It's just a lot of them are, they're DBs. I hate telling them, wide receivers. That's why I would say the brains work from the inside out. That's why your offensive linemen are smartest.